Hi there, and thank you so much for joining us on Tips for the Transition, the Career Roadmap, where we share stories about women's careers that will inspire and empower you to think differently about yours. I'm Maria Tomas-Keegan. Each week, I bring you insightful conversations, creating and sharing resources to encourage women to be more confident, resilient, and brave in their career and life choices. We stream live weekly every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the E360 TV network, which you can find on your favorite streaming platforms like Roku and Apple TV and Amazon Fire. And we go live simultaneously on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where you can interact with us. And if you prefer to listen to your favorite shows while you're on the go, we're on all the podcast channels as well. So if something inspires you today and you want more, please subscribe to your favorite channel, leave us a comment, and share. Share your favorite episodes so we can create more ripples in the world for women. Can you imagine being away from the corporate world for 22 years to follow your passion, then returning to corporate? I think about that and I cannot imagine that for me, but that's today's story. When I heard Kelly James' journey, I knew it would resonate with many of you. Kelly is a former attorney who took a leap and left the legal profession over 2 decades ago to pursue a career in freelance journalism. She wrote several books during that time, and recently, Kelly made another bold decision to re enter the corporate world. And in this episode, she'll share the challenges she faced, the lessons she learned, and how she managed the demands of single parenting alongside her new role. Kelly's story is both inspiring and practical, offering valuable insights for anyone considering a career change or a return to the corporate world. Stay with us as we explore her journey and share lessons on how you can thrive in your own career transition. So I'm really eager to get this conversation started. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
It is my pleasure to have you. I loved our conversation when we first met. And as I said before, I am sure that there are a lot of women who are listening and watching who are going to love hearing your story, and it's going to resonate with them. So let's get started. So you were a lawyer before you, as you say, escaped from
Yes,
the law to
correct.
write full time. So what provoked that decision? How did that all get started?
Yes, well, a little bit of backstory. I actually majored in writing, which the major at the time was called rhetoric in school when I was getting my bachelor's. And I went to law school on a whim. At the time, I had never talked to another lawyer. I didn't know what lawyers did all day. I didn't really know what the legal field would look like. But I had watched a show that you may have watched too called LA Law, and I was enamored of it. And I was thinking I was going to drive a nice car and wear these nice suits and everything. That isn't actually what being a lawyer is like. But about 5.5 years in, I was just really, really unhappy in the legal profession. And I had started writing again. And I sold an article to Cosmopolitan. I didn't know that you can't sell to a national publication right out the gate. I didn't have a journalism background. I didn't even write a query letter. I wrote the article and sent it to the magazine, and the editor there bought it. And then a couple months later, I sold an article to brides on legal and avoiding legal problems as you plan your wedding. And with those two clips, is what they were called then, because you actually cut them out of the magazine, I launched my freelance writing career. I had no journalism background, no connections, no experience. I knew nothing and learned it all kind of along the way.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you knew nothing about the legal profession, yet you jumped right into that.
Correct.
And you didn't know about or how to be or how to sell your work as a journalist, and you jumped into that. So that takes a lot of guts. That takes that takes a lot of trust, I think. I'm thinking about, let's talk about that for a second. How did you find the courage to make leaps like that?
First, with the legal profession, any new lawyer, baby lawyer, embryonic lawyer, whatever you want to call them, you know nothing. You know nothing about the legal field when you start. You've gone to law school. You think you know a lot about the law. You really know about 1% of the law. So that transition into a career is not unusual. But to quit and leave the law and go into freelance journalism was a more dramatic transition, because when you do that, or when you start your own business, or you create your own company, there is no roadmap. When you get out of law school and you join a private firm, the roadmap is you start out as an associate, you do that for a few years, hopefully you make senior associate, then eventually you make junior partner, then you make senior partner, but there's definitely a roadmap or some kind of track. It actually is called a track that you're on. Leaving all that behind to start my own freelance writing business, I really had no idea of what it was going to be like. I will admit that at the time I was living with the man who became my husband, and other than my law school loans and my car payment, I did not have a lot of debt. I also didn't have children yet. So I didn't have the financial demands that a lot of us have, that I certainly have now. So that I was able to live off my savings for 6 months while I built my business. And that's one of the things I tell people who want to freelance. I'm like, you have to have at least 6 months of savings in the bank to make that kind of transition. So I think that I wasn't thinking of it so much as being courageous as I was so miserable every Sunday. I just, every Friday I was like, yay, the weekend. And then, you get the Sunday morning depression, followed by Sunday afternoon misery, followed by Sunday night just awfulness. So it was really, I didn't think of it as courageous so much as like a life-saving maneuver for me, honestly.
Oh, I so relate to that Sunday dread and
Yes, yes.
and the Monday blues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in corporate do relate to that. It's like, yeah, even if you absolutely love the work you do, it's tough to leave a weekend where you have very little time for yourself, even, and then have to start the grind all over again on Monday morning. It's still a tough road. Um, I was happy when I left corporate. It came um, as a rude awakening for me. I didn't expect it. It
Hmm.
was not by my hand.
Hmm.
So I was part of a massive layoff,
Hmm.
and it came out of the blue. So, but in retrospect, I don't think you could pay me enough to go back to corporate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you did. So let's talk about that for a second. So you were a full-time freelance journalist for 22 years
Correct.
before you re-entered corporate America. So can you share with us what made that decision for you?
Of course. At that point in my career, 95% of the work I was doing was ghostwriting books. And when you ghostwrite a book, it's kind of like being an actor in a movie, in that you have one big project and you can't really take on any other projects. I loved the work. I love ghostwriting. I love working with smart people to help them write their books. But sometimes what would happen is a book proposal, an agent would sit on it for 2, 3, 4 weeks, or we'd be trying to sell a book and then it didn't sell for months. And so I had enough work and I was making enough money, but um, it was kind of a roller coaster of work. I'm either super, super busy or not busy at all. And that's very stressful and anxiety producing, especially in a person like me who has anxiety anyway. And there was a company that was hiring about 3 miles from my house for a job that I knew I could do. And I was going to make less money than I was successfully freelancing. But at the same time, they had this thing called health insurance, which I was paying for myself. And I just thought, well, I was talking to one of my friends and he said, unless this company was across the street from you, how much closer can you get? Because I was like, I don't want to commute, you know? So long story short, I decided to kind of give it a flyer. It wasn't, excuse me, it wasn't like I sat down and really proed and conned this out. I think one of the themes of my life has been, you know, kind of jump and see what happens and figure it out once I on the way down. So
Yeah, that is a pattern for you, isn't it?
yes, for sure.
Yeah. And for some people that works great. Other people um, have to think, you know, they go into analysis paralysis before they
Yes,
can
agreed.
make a decision, because those are big leaps. Those are leaps into the unknown, where, you know, for many that's riddled with fear,
Hmm.
and it stops them. You look at an opportunity and go, why not?
Yeah. I think too, um, I was just talking about this with a friend of mine. We're talking about when you are in a really stressful environment, it's kind of like wearing blinders. You're unable to see all of the options around you, and it's can be very limiting. So I really didn't think I could go back into a corporate environment, but that's because I had those blinders on, and I was, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I do not like to say I can't. I would much prefer to say maybe I can't, but I want to try it first. And years ago, when I had just started freelancing, I wanted to write my version of the Great American Novel. And I started three different novels, 3 different years. I always started on January 1st, got 14 chapters in, abandoned it. Next January 1st, 10 chapters in, abandoned it. Next January 1st, 8 chapters in, abandoned it. And I could see that at some point I was going to write for like 3 days and then abandon, whatever the book was. And I remember this, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's very wise and meditates and does yoga and does all the Zen things that we all should do all the time. And I said, I just can't write a novel. And she said, you just can't write a novel right now. That got in there, that stuck. Imagine if she would have said, excuse me, imagine if she would have said, well, who cares? Why do you want to write a novel anyway? No big deal. Or so what? That would have been a supportive friend, right? Like, oh, it's okay. No, she said, you just can't write a novel right now. And about a year later, I got an idea for yet another novel. And I wrote that one and I finished it and I sold it to the second publisher I sent it to. But at that time, I'm a failed novelist, but I just hadn't reached that point in the stream of my life where I was ready to do it. So going back to your question, I always want to be like, maybe I can do this, but maybe I can't do it right now. And it's okay to not be able to do something right now.
That is such good advice that she gave you, and
Yes.
that now it helps you to
I apologize, Maria. We talked about dogs and I'm getting my dog sorted here.
okay, it helps you to explore the possibility, right?
Correct.
That it may not be right now, but that doesn't mean you've failed.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And,
Love that.
and yeah,
Good advice.
and I think women in particular, we're so hard on ourselves when we fail to meet a goal that we have. Um, I think every woman needs that friend who isn't going to try to make you necessarily feel better or comfort you, but just be more of a neutral sounding board of like, no, that's you're just not there yet. That's what I definitely needed to.
Right. Right. And that is a very supportive friend, right?
Yes. Yes.
She's actually opening the aperture for you,
Exactly.
so that you can see the possibility that maybe in the future you'll finish one of those novels, or you'll write one and not abandon it. You'll complete
Exactly.
it and then look what happened, right?
Exactly.
So it
Yep.
just opened up the possibility for you that you're thinking about it differently, right? When
Yes.
you I I I get that this is my very favorite quote in the world, because I repeat it all the time. It just plays so well here too. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Oh, I like that.
right?
I
That's
like
Wayne Dyer.
that. Okay.
It's like my mantra.
Yes, I
When
like
you when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's what happened for you. She helped
yes.
you just take the Rubik's cube with all the possibilities and turn it slightly so that you saw it differently.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so after 22 years of living your passion and writing, you went back to a corporate role. What were some of the challenges that you faced returning to a corporate environment
Yeah.
after so many years of doing
Um,
what you loved?
yes, honestly, the first one is strictly practical, and it was very challenging for me to have to go and sit someplace for 8.5 hours. And I know people who have office jobs where they do that all the time are like, come on. But when you are not used to that, it is a very dramatic change. And I'm kind of a hyper person. I like to take a lot of breaks during my day, take my dog around the block, maybe throw in a load of laundry, get up and walk around. And in most corporate environments, your boss is not going to be okay with you getting up every 45 minutes to 50 minutes and maybe, hey, can I just go wander around the parking lot for a while because I need to get some vitamin D? So that was a challenge. And part of that too, not being able to say run to the grocery store or throw a load of laundry in or pick up my daughter from school, or the things that I did take for granted, like, when you're working from home, and of course a lot more of us are working from home now post COVID, but you are able to kind of make your life work around your job and make your job work around your life. And when you have to be at a workplace for 8.5, 9 hours plus your commute, you have to do all those chores and errands and housework and everything outside of those hours. And that was a big shock for me. And finally, going from working by myself, I am an extrovert in an introvert's job, but working by myself to being surrounded with dozens of other human beings, that was a big change also.
Wow. Okay. So, and some of those things, um, w- I can relate to all of those things. Now, I have been blessed to have worked from home. Even when I was at IBM, I worked from home because I managed a global team and nobody sat
Right.
where I sit in Phoenix. So it didn't matter where my office was. So it was at home. And for 30 years, I've done this. Um, so I get being, and I'm caregiver for my husband. So I get to get up and go make his breakfast, go make his lunch, and take those breaks and not have anyone um, uh, expect me, right, to be right on it, right there. So yeah, there's lots of that. Feeling isolated, right, when you're working from home and then being put into a situation where there's buzz around you all the time. Do you find it hard to concentrate?
It's actually the opposite. The office that I've worked in, the last two jobs I've had have been fully remote. But the first position, the one that took me out of freelancing back to corporate America, it was not what I thought. I had pictured like a newsroom, or like, remember the Lou Grant newsroom show, or Mary Tyler Moore. I'm really dating myself here with these references, but
But I remember them.
yeah, that's that's what I pictured. And I would say a good 2/3 of the staff had giant headphones on, and there was very little interaction among people. I happened to sit next to the sales team, and they talked back and forth. They were on calls, or so, hey, Slack me that, or I need that deck, or I got a guy talking to, like, there was a lot of interaction with them. And then there was a lot of interaction with the SEO, the search engine optimization team on the other side of the building. But the rest of it was just, it was like working in a, I don't want to say a morgue. But it was like working in a very quiet bank. So that,
Well,
for me, that was an interesting transition.
okay. All right. All right. So you also had the single mom thing going on,
Correct.
right? So now not working at home any longer, having to go into the office. How did you manage the single parenting with returning to full time corporate work?
Yeah, that was, let me think. My kids were 6 and 11, so they were little. My their dad and I lived a mile apart by design and co-parented very well, and that was a huge help. But if I was really stuck, Eric could, take them to school or pick them up from school or whatever. My son was old enough to come home from school by himself, but my daughter, I put her in an after-school program, which wasn't optimal. And I had some guilt about that, but it was only a couple hours a day. And I just kind of rationalized it with, hey, if this turns into something wonderful, it's more security, it's more stability, which is good for my kids. I will say initially, I was very committed to the idea that I have to make dinner from scratch every night for my children. And I gave up on that about 3 or 4 months in. It was too much. I was stressing myself when I could put a pizza in or, get takeout on the way home, and the kids didn't care. It was me thinking, well, now I'm gone all day. I need to make sure my kids have a, homemade, nutritious, well-balanced meal that they're going to eat. When what was really important was that the three of us sat down and had a meal together, even if it was from Panda or Chipotle or some other places.
I'm so glad that you went there because the mom guilt thing, I think, it's real for a lot of working moms, whether they're working from home or they're working, in a corporate role or at a brick and mortar somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, the mom guilt thing is real. I love that you said that you had to rethink what was really important.
Hmm.
The value for you was to sit together with your children at at a meal and have a conversation about your day,
Correct.
and it really didn't matter as long as it was somewhat nutritious, right?
Yeah.
What the food was on the plate.
Yeah, I actually I wrote about this in my book, and I remember this night because I think it's the first night in my mind I gave up. I was like, I'm giving up. I don't care. And I'd been snacking at work all day. I wasn't even hungry, and I came home with Panda for my son, and then mac and cheese for my daughter, and the two, their two favorite foods. And I had a glass of wine, and my daughter was like, "Can I sit on the kitchen counter?" And I was like, sure. And she sat on the kitchen counter. I sat in a chair. My son sat in a chair, and the three of us talked and laughed. And I really did have this moment. We don't even all have to be at the table. It's just that, we're having this time together. And it really made me rethink how much extra stress I was putting on myself to do something that maybe for some women, and kudos to them, but for most of us, I think it's an unrealistic expectation. And as you said, something that makes us feel guilty when it's not going to kill them to have takeout,
Right.
maybe a couple nights a week, just saying.
Right.
And
Right.
I will say my kids are now 19 and 14. They both know how to cook. I taught my daughter the other day how to make chicken, and just this is something that I never learned as a kid. So I always say I'm raising adults. I don't say I'm raising kids. I'm raising adults. So maybe if they had a mom who did cook all the time, they wouldn't have some of the life skills they have now. See how I rationalize that?
Well, you know what? But that's beautiful. That is really beautiful. And I think women who hear that are going to think twice about how they are thinking about that they are required, right,
Yes.
to be a good mother,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the story you just painted is to be a good mother is to spend quality time with your kids,
Yes.
however that comes about, whether they're sitting on the counter, you're sitting with a glass of wine and you're chatting away and you're having quality time, a moment, right?
Yes. I agree.
That's what matters.
Yes.
So, when I talk about this with my clients all the time, when we really get centered and grounded in what really matters to us, and we make our choices and decisions around those values,
Hmm.
then we can release ourselves from a lot of the social pressures,
Yeah.
right? The expectations that are put on us as women, the beliefs and the values we were raised with, we get to question those in our role today.
Mm-hmm. And I don't even think they're necessarily beliefs that were put on us. I think they're beliefs we put on ourselves. Um,
Sometimes,
you know,
sometimes they are.
and I do like that idea of, what really matters. What really matters I'm a big fan of mindfulness, and I do really actually do meditate every day. But what matters most, like right now in this minute, what matters most?
Right.
And for those women who are listening, my son's at college now. He left on Sunday, and I won't lie, I was ready for him to go back to college. Yeah, it's Thursday. I miss him now, but I didn't miss him the first day or two. But we did not take a family vacation this summer, and we usually do. And I had a lot of stuff going on this summer. And before he left, I apologized. I said we should have taken a family vacation. He was working a lot too. I was working a lot. I said I that was a mistake. I take responsibility for that. We'll take one over Christmas break. We'll go back to our regular vacation schedule. But one of the things I did do this summer with him is we golfed quite a bit, just for 9 holes or whatever. But that's something that my son and I really enjoy doing. And he will golf with me anytime. I mean, he can work all day and I'll say, you want to golf tonight? He's like, yeah, when are we going? And those moments on the golf course are some of our best bonding times. We don't necessarily talk about anything serious, but it's that it gives you that space for a good conversation, or talking about something maybe I don't know about, or we're talking more as, I'm like, hey, that was, I had a really good drive. And he's like, that was a great drive, Mom. I'm like, I know, we're all shocked. But just that kind of connection is that,
Right.
that connection is what matters to me as a parent.
So it's creating moments and memories
Yes.
that really in the long run, right, are what matter.
Yes. Yep.
And they will matter to your son forever, right? He will remember those moments, those memories of you guys playing golf.
Yeah.
And it kind of creates the space.
Yes.
Whether you have the conversation at that time or not, it creates the safe space that I will be willing to bet you he feels comfortable coming to you to talk to you about anything.
I hope so. That is the goal. And
I'll bet you he does.
And I would say too, my daughter, she tried golfing a few times. She doesn't enjoy it. What my daughter likes to do is go to Sephora and buy makeup. And so this is what my daughter enjoys. And so about a month ago, I said, hey, let's go to Sephora. And she was like, we're going to go to Sephora. I've never been to a Sephora. So we spent 2 or 3 hours. We went to Sephora. We shopped for some, she just started high school, shopped for some school clothes and stuff. And again, it's what does your kid want to do? I do not enjoy going to the mall. I'm just telling you now. And those times for me as a parent, even if I don't necessarily want to golf, I will go golfing with Ryan because Ryan wants to golf. And I want him to know that he's a priority. He's a priority, and spending time with him is a priority for me.
Yeah. All right. This conversation I love where it's gone.
Yeah, me too.
It's so good to talk with the mom. Hey, puppy.
Yeah.
It's so good to talk with you about things that I know other moms are struggling with, as they are struggling with their careers and their corporate roles.
Yes.
So that thank you for sharing all of that. The whole idea of what I call work-life harmony. A lot of people call it balance. I don't believe in balance, but when you can find the harmonious way to integrate your family and your life and your work in ways that allow you to honor your values, share in the lives of your children in meaningful ways, and not put so much pressure on yourself to be the perfect mom, right?
Yes, I do think that's something we learn, hopefully, as our kids get older. And my next door neighbors have a new baby, 2 months old. She's darling. I said, you do have the cutest baby in the world. You know that because, there's that sense of, and they're just besotted with her. And I was sitting out there the other day, and one of the grandpas came over, and I was meditating out on my front porch, and I could hear him talking to his granddaughter, and I couldn't help it. I smiled, and I was just had this sense of just witnessing all that love. You know what I mean? It's their first grandchild. They're just so excited and so delighted and everything. And I thought, wow, oh, they've got so much stress ahead of them. And I didn't tell them that. It's like I'm at the point in my parenting journey where some things are a lot easier. Some things are more challenging, but some things are easier. And yet, because I was self-employed when my kids were little, I was able to do a lot of the stuff with them that I wanted to. I don't have a lot of regrets about what I didn't do with them when they were little, and that I'm grateful
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And again, one day my kid might not want to golf with me. So I'm like, I don't, I can't control whether that happens. So let's get that golf in now.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Such good points. Okay. So let me ask you, what advice do you have for women who are thinking about or actually have maybe already returned to the corporate world after some time away? It could have been raising their children. It could have been, working on a business that, didn't work out for them. It could be that they needed to go back for the insurance benefits.
Right.
Whatever the reason, what advice do you have for women who are thinking about doing that or are already on the road?
I number one is it kind of calls back to something we already talked about, which is think about don't don't have those blinders on. My when I was a freelance journalist, I would go and have, I'm not saying this is great if you have heart palpitations, but I would go have 3 or 4 cups of coffee and just create a list of ideas, like all the things I could write about, all the markets I could write about, all the topics I was interested in, things that people I knew were going through, just like this giant laundry list of ideas. And when you're thinking about a career change, I think it's really smart to write down everything. Think about everything. If you would have told me 2 years ago that I was going to be back in the law, I would have laughed hysterically. It would never happen. Well, the job I have now, I'm the content manager for a mediation and arbitration firm, and I like my job. I have a lot of freedom and flexibility, and it's not something that would have occurred to me before. So I think my first piece of advice is just really keep your eyes open. Always be kind of looking around. Don't be that horse with the blinders on where you're just kind of plodding, one foot after the other. A second thing is, I wrote an article on this several months ago, and it was on the power of using envy to your advantage. All of us experience envy at some point. Whether it's a marriage that you wish you had, or somebody has a nice house, or somebody has more vacation time, or whatever it is. But when you feel envious, that is a sign. Like, what is it that you're missing that you're envious of? And I'm at the point in my life where I don't really care about making a ton of money. I wouldn't fight making a ton of money, but it's not one of my drivers. Traveling and time is. So one of my closest friends was going to Italy for 12 days with her boyfriend, and she told me this, and I love her. She's one of my best friends. And when she told me that, I was like, are you kidding? Like, I was like really, really envious. That was a sign Kelly needs to make more time to travel. Like, you know what I mean? It's a definitely a good opening. And I think the third piece of advice is don't be afraid to try. When I went in house 6.5 years ago, I went to lunch the day after the interview with a friend of mine. And this is what I said, you know what? If I hate it, I'll just quit. And he said, well, that's a great attitude. And he said, if you're going to do this, you should commit to doing it for 6 months or a year, because otherwise, you're not going to see it through. That's a reasonable goal. I would say if you're starting a job, give it 6 months. 3 months is not long enough, but you don't have to stay there forever. And I would rather get into a bad situation that I can leave than not to have even tried it at all. So I think that giving yourself a reasonable goal is better than, you know, nobody has to stay at a job forever. And like you, Maria,
Right.
I've also been on the receiving end of a reduction in force, and it was no fun at all. So
Mm-mm.
totally get that.
No, no, it's not. And sometimes, things happen, not by our hand, right?
Correct.
And we have no control over that.
Yeah.
But I love what you just said, because I think a lot of people think if they make a decision to do something, they're stuck.
Yes.
And that again is it's how we look at it,
Yeah.
right? So if we don't think of it as the last decision, right? We can always change our minds. We
Correct.
can always make another decision. And we can look at the decision we just made as a stepping stone to the next one.
Right. I think the other part of that too is, and being completely honest here, sometimes I have 4 to 8 years left of work, full time work ahead of me. Maybe more, maybe a little less, but at least 4 to 8 years. And some days I just cannot do that. I'm not kidding. I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, I cannot do this. Any of these people aren't getting back to me. This all the regular. It's called having a job,
Right,
And then
right,
I'm like, wait, I don't have to do it for 4 years. I don't have to do it for 8 years. I have to do it for one more day. I have to do it for today. And that reframing it like that and putting it
yeah,
in, this is all I have to do. Today, all I have to do is I have to meditate today. I don't have to meditate for the rest of my life. Just have to meditate before I go to bed. It will get done. And
right,
staying in that moment and also recognizing that whatever emotion you're having connected with this, overwhelm, envy that I can't just retire, whatever it is, emotions are temporary. Emotions are temporary. They're not permanent. And that's really helpful to me when I'm feeling like stuck, trapped, overwhelmed, whatever that emotion is that you're having. It's not real. We think it's real. It's not real. It's just a feeling, just some brain chemicals floating around in your head. So
right,
that
right.
really helps me. And I do really enjoy my weekends. I do enjoy the non-work times. So
Yeah, yeah. And making the most of that time is important,
yes,
to you, right?
correct.
So yeah, and when we spend so much of our time and energy at the work we do, we sometimes feel, like you said, all those emotions start to put you get frustrated. People aren't returning your calls. They're not giving you what you need for you to continue to do your work, and it's frustrating. There's lots and lots of emotions come around that. So, to your point, if you believe that emotions need motion, right?
Hmm.
They will come up and out, right?
Correct.
They
Yes.
are fleeting
Yes.
as long as you don't get stuck in them,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, don't get stuck in the emotion. Acknowledge it. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm
Right.
whatever it is, right? And then if it's a negative emotion, just let it run its course and
Right.
leave you, right? And then you can do something else, right? Then you can respond in a different way.
Yes. And the other thing I would add to that, Maria, is I try not to say I am frustrated. I say I feel
I
frustrated.
feel, yeah,
I'm not anything. I'm just a
yeah,
collection of
yeah.
cells with some energy.
Right.
I
And so
feel fr- yeah.
that's a great
It-
that is a
yeah.
absolutely, that is a great way to not allow the emotion to define you,
Exactly. Unless
right?
I feel awesome, and then I am awesome. Couldn't
Yeah,
help myself.
I am awesome and I feel awesome.
Exactly. All of it.
All of it. Right, right. All right. So, what did you learn about yourself? You shared quite a few things here, about what you learned about yourself. What else?
Um,
Something that you learned from maybe working in corporate America after so much time away from it that maybe you didn't know about yourself.
I think that I probably knew this on some innate level, but what really makes me go and what I'm really about is connecting with other human beings. and being put into a job where I didn't feel like I was connecting with human beings very often was not very fun for me. Um, and the other thing I found out was even at 52, I could take what felt like a tremendous risk and push myself to sit at a desk for 8.5, 9 hours a day to learn the names of, 60 people in a couple weeks and try not to forget anything. And the other part of it was I learned that I'm willing to ask questions and admit when I don't know something. And I think that as we get older, there's a natural inclination for us to think that not that we know it all, but that we know enough. And that's not true. And part of it comes from freelancing and being a journalist. I love asking questions and I love learning and I love knowing more about something I didn't know about before. And my willingness to do that is it's very gratifying to me. And I think it's something that I mean, I went into this environment where I was supposed to be a corporate cog, and immediately I need to know how all of this works. So that's something that I actually like and appreciate about myself that I probably didn't realize was such an innate part of myself before.
That's an important lesson, I think. We don't know it all. We don't know.
Right.
However, those of us who have been around for a minute or two on this earth,
Right.
we have a lot of wisdom, right? We've learned a lot. We can share a lot, but we have a lot to learn. And so thinking about ourselves as lifelong learners,
Hmm.
right? That again, it just opens the aperture for us. It
I
opens the possibilities.
I think too, and I think again, as someone in my 50s, and ageism is a real thing, and I'm the oldest person on my team. I'm not thrilled about that. Can't do anything about it unless we hire someone older than me. But what I can do is not act like I think I know everything or I know enough, and always not question. I don't mean question in a negative way, but I mean always say, well, "What about this?" Or "Yeah, let's try it." Or we're doing a big change in our marketing department, and my initial reaction was, "Oh, this might hurt. This might hurt my value to the company." And then I was like, "Okay, let's give it a try." That's a much better attitude to come in with than, "No, we're not going to do that," or "We've always done it this way," or we've
Right,
all worked with somebody
right,
who's like, "Well, my old company, blah blah blah." Nobody
right,
cares. No, what? So, I think
right.
that keeping that, as you said, that attitude of learning and that questioning mind, it also
Yeah.
helps us grow older better, hopefully. So,
Right. Always being curious, right?
yes, yes,
Always being curious. And you said something earlier, a couple of times actually throughout this conversation about, let's just give it a try.
yes,
There's it as long as there's no harm in trying, right?
right,
Let's give it a whirl and see what happens. We might learn something. It might work. It might not work, and we'll learn something. Right? So there's always something to be gained.
yes.
I have
Even
a
if it's
mentor who's one of her mantras is why not?
yeah,
Why not try it?
yeah,
Right? Why not test yourself? Why not learn something? Why not? Why not?
yes. I
Yeah,
like that.
it's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah. All right. Well, I've loved where this conversation has gone today,
I have as well.
Kelly. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and your experiences, leaving corporate, jumping into the law, all of it, jumping into the law,
Yeah,
leaving the law on a whim, jumping into a freelance career, and then jumping back into corporate, and all of your lessons along the way, and your experience as a working mom. That all of this has been, I think, golden nuggets of wisdom that you have passed along to our listeners today. So thank you for that. If you were going to wrap this all up in a bow for us, what would be our key takeaways?
I think I touched on these earlier, but keep the blinders off. Look around, be open to all possibilities. Don't be afraid. Worst case scenario, what I say to my kids all the time is for every problem, and then they say there is a solution. There is a solution. There's always a solution. So keep those blinders off. Never let fear get in the way of trying something you want to do. I really like your idea of why not. And even if it doesn't work, maybe it turns into a great entertaining story for your friends later. That's worthwhile also.
That's worth a lot. Good
Yes.
stories are worth a lot.
Correct. Agreed.
You have some wonderful stories to share. So I am so glad that you came to our show and you've shared them with us. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
I know that there are going to be some people who are going to want to know more about you, your books, etc. So what is the one best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, best way is absolutely my LinkedIn profile, which is on the show notes there. And if I may, I did write a book about going back into corporate America called The Book That Almost Got Me Fired: How I Barely Survived a Year in Corporate America. That's full of these stories and advice, definitely aimed at women, definitely aimed at people who have been out of the workforce for a little while. I think they'll find it helpful.
That's fabulous. And they will find that
It's on my
in
LinkedIn. Mhm.
on your LinkedIn page
Yep.
as well. So, and there are some links for Kelly below as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Kelly, thank you. I really appreciate. I've loved this conversation.
Me too.
All right. And for those who are watching and listening, I really appreciate that you're a part of this community. Thank you so much for always being here. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, click a star, and share it so that other people can benefit from this conversation with Kelly. Creating and sharing resources is just one of my favorite things to do, and that's what we do every week when we create these TV shows. Another favorite thing of mine is being a career and life coach for women navigating challenging times and helping them get unstuck, explore new possibilities, open the aperture, and find harmony in their careers and lives. So if something in this episode resonates with you and you'd like a fresh perspective, let's talk. The links, as I said, for Kelly and me are in the show notes below, and you can connect with either one of us that way. And then let's meet again here next Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for another inspiring conversation. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.